2 Kings chapter 5. And Naaman, head of the host of the king of Aram, was a great man before his Lord, and accepted of face, for Yahweh had given salvation to Aram by him, and the man was mighty in valor, but leprous. And the Arameans have gone out by troops, and they take a little girl captive out of the land of Israel, and she is before the wife of Naaman. And she says to her mistress, "Oh, that my Lord were before the prophet who is in Samaria! Then he recovers from his leprosy." And one goes and declares it to his Lord, saying, "Thus and thus the girl who is from the land of Israel has spoken." And the king of Aram says, "Go, enter, and I send a letter to the king of Israel." And he goes and takes in his hand 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of garments. And he brings in the letter to the king of Israel, saying, "And now, at the coming in of this letter to you, behold, I have sent my servant Naaman to you, and you have recovered him from his leprosy." And it comes to pass at the king of Israel's reading the letter, that he tears his garments and says, "Am I God, to put to death and to keep alive, that this one is sending to me to recover a man from his leprosy? For surely know now and see, for he is presenting himself to me." And it comes to pass at Elisha the man of God's hearing that the king of Israel has torn his garments, that he sends to the king, saying, "Why have you torn your garments? Please let him come to me, and he knows that there is a prophet in Israel." And Naaman comes with his horses and with his chariot, and stands at the opening of the house for Elisha. And Elisha sends a messenger to him, saying, "Go, and you have washed 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh turns back to you, and be clean." And Naaman is angry, and goes on and says, "Behold, I said, he certainly comes out to me, and has stood and called in the name of his God Yahweh, and waved his hand over the place, and recovered the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Do I not wash in them, and I have been clean?" And he turns and goes on in a fury. And his servants come near and speak to him and say, "My father, the prophet had spoken a great thing to you. Do you not do it? And surely when he has said to you, 'Wash and be clean,' and he goes down and dips in the Jordan 7 times, according to the word of the man of God, and his flesh turns back as the flesh of a little youth, and is clean. And he turns back to the man of God, he and all his camp, and comes in and stands before him and says, 'Now behold, I have known that there is not a God in all the earth except in Israel. And now, please, take a blessing from your servant.' And he says, 'Yahweh lives before whom I have stood, if I take it.' And he presses on him to take, and he refuses. And Naaman says, 'If not, please let a couple of mules' burden of earth be given to your servant, for your servant makes no more burnt offering and sacrifice to other gods, but only sacrifices to Yahweh. For in this thing may Yahweh be propitious to your servant. In the coming in of my Lord into the house of Rimmon, to bow himself there, and he was supported by my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. For my bowing myself in the house of Rimmon, may Yahweh now be propitious to your servant in this thing.' And he says to him, 'Go in peace.' And he goes from him a distance of land. And Gehazi, servant of Elisha, the man of God, says, 'Behold, my Lord has spared this Aramean Naaman, not to receive from his hand that which he brought. For Yahweh lives, if I have run after him, then I have taken something from him.' And Gehazi pursues after Naaman, and Naaman sees one running after him, and comes down off the chariot to meet him, and says, 'Is there peace?' And he says, 'Peace. My Lord has sent me, saying, Behold, now 2 young men of the sons of prophets have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments to them.' And Naaman says, 'Be pleased to take 2 talents. And he urges him, and binds 2 talents of silver into 2 purses, and 2 changes of garments, and gives them to 2 of his young men, and they carry them before him. And he comes to the high place, and takes them out of their hand, and lays them up in the house, and sends the men away, and they go. And he has come in, and stands by his Lord. And Elisha says to him, From where, Gehazi? And he says, Your servant did not go here or there. And he says to him, My heart did not go when the man turned from off his chariot to meet you. Is it a time to take silver, and to take garments, and olives, and vines, and flock, and herd, and menservants, and maidservants? Indeed, the leprosy of Naaman cleaves to you and to your seed for all time. And he goes out from before him, leprous as snow.